we hear artificial intelligence, we hear machine learning terms used all the time, but how are these technologies best being used to drive our business and manage our information? So in our next session, Afshin, the Executive Vice President with Ataccama, is going to lead our panel discussion entitled Farewell to 2020, which I'm sure everybody's happy to say that. Lessons on agility, adaptability, and moving at the speed of light. So welcome, Afshin, and the panel.
Thank you, John. I'm very excited to be moderating this wonderful panel discussion today. We have 4 panelists, 4 different companies, 4 different use cases with unique perspectives and challenges. But each of them, like you in the audience, have had to deal with a very unusual year, a time when digital transformation of the business has become more important than ever. When we asked our panelists what the biggest takeaway from 2020 was, it all came down to 3 words: agility, speed, and adaptability. These panelists have led their data management programs through this transformation and are going to share the biggest lesson learned from when it comes to engaging the business, creating new business value, and embracing agility with the right technology to ensure success. So with that, I would like to introduce you to our panelists today. Heather Richardson, VP Data Management, Farm Credit Services of America; Fiona Fox, Head of Data Governance, Varo; Amy Kuczynski, VP Group Data, Argo Group; and Dianne, Senior Data Architect, Blue Cross Blue Shield Association. Thank you all for joining us today. So, we have seen how the crises that we have faced in 2020 have really reshaped how organizations embrace digital transformation agenda. And this transformation is fundamentally changing how you operate and deliver value to customers, how you approach operational needs. It's also a big cultural change that requires organizations to continually challenge the status quo and get comfortable with speedy adoption. So for many, this means really adopting agile principles across the business and embracing automation technologies to help gain speed and also lower reliance on some final resources that are within the organizations. So with that, Heather, 2020 was a big year for AI and machine learning in the context of providing speed and agility to data management and governance. Could you maybe highlight a tangible business initiative of Farm Credit Services of America where you found that speed and agility were critical, and can maybe touch on why you decided to leverage AI and machine learning in order to drive success?
Yeah, absolutely. There's several. I'll just pick one here. So as Jane mentioned earlier in the Microsoft presentation, AI and ML shifts time spent from work from hours to minutes. And that was absolutely what we experienced, except for us, it was from months to minutes, which was a huge shift. So our teammates are our culture at Farm Credit. So our challenge was, how can we give our teammates in the field more time to spend with our customers, as that social, emotional, and relational connection can't be replicated by machines. And we have customers who still prefer and expect that face-to-face connection. So we have amazing relational and historical knowledge within our teammates and some very differentiating prescriptive analytics already available to us. The problem to solve was connecting that human context with that machine algorithm to overcome the agility and the adaptability of this new information coming into us. So what we learned was our retail offices didn't trust the leads lists that were being provided to them, and they shared that they had more luck with their own leads. We quickly learned the lack of trust came from the fact that they couldn't trace back where these leads came from and how they were calculated.
Right.
So they each had their own way to generate across 48 different offices, ways that had been used and trusted for years, and most not the same as the next. So what we learned is there were best practices in those manual efforts and best practices in the prescriptive analytics being provided by that lead list, but the value gained was quickly lost because by the time both lists were available, the leads had already passed by and people had already reached out to them. So there were countless hours being spent to recreate these lists over and over, and no metrics to track the effectiveness or efficiency of each method being used. So we had recently just invested in Salesforce, which I'm sure many have, the Lamborghini of sales platforms, but without leads to feed it, we had a large gap to close. So we leveraged our MDM platform, our internal data, and our external data to create an ML-based solution to score the leads and ML to create the lineage of the score back to the source data. So our retail offices could have the transparency they needed to trust the prescribed lead list, And so then as new external data is received, we automated the process so we could act on that information as soon as it was available to us. So that was a game changer in getting our retail offices to start thinking of ML and AI as additional intelligence, not artificial intelligence. So that's good.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Heather. So you really were able to leverage your AI and machine learning to improve the quality of the data that you actually fed into the other processes that you had within your organization as well. So in an ideal world, you'll be able to create this modern infrastructure, from scratch, and in a place where you probably don't have, ideally you would want to have to deal with legacy decisions that you made in the past that could affect how you build your modern ecosystem. And Fiona, you've had this opportunity at Varo, like a very unique opportunity in our space to actually be able to build this from scratch. So what did this mean to your business to have this kind of opportunity? And then can you share maybe some of the lessons learned at Varo on being able to build a bank from the ground up? And most importantly, why did you decide to focus on speed and agility when developing your ecosystem?
Absolutely. And I think I know my situation is very unique here. I have struggled with a lot of the challenges that we've heard about earlier today, and definitely getting together disparate data sources. But here at Varo, 2020 has been quite a year. Building the data management processes and capabilities from scratch, alongside standing up a fully digital cloud-based new bank ecosystem end to end. I knew I really wanted to be able to stand up agile data management and run parallel with the speed of the business, really in order not to miss the opportunity of governing and managing data without having to do that massive retrofit later. And also to enable the most expansive business usage of the data possible. This meant focusing on critical business processes, new product development, and all new initiatives, which in turn has brought tangible business value along the journey. It also meant that I needed to turn the traditional order of data management rollout totally on its head. Taking a year or two to build a business glossary or create lineage or enable data quality and discovery would really defeat the purpose of being agile, especially when you've just stood up a core banking system, data lake, and hundreds of other systems all at once. And there would be little or no value realized early on. So really, I recommended, in our case, the upfront focus on optimizing the data solution firstly, the design of it to support the business, and then standing up the key three concurrently, the business glossary, data quality, and data lineage. It wasn't perfect or mature immediately, obviously, because it was a massive task, but it provides us the visibility and the connection of the data foundation. And the AI ML foundation has provided incredible uplift and scalability, where in the past we'd have large teams would be required for this, and the evolution of data management then is always in catch-up mode. I think one of the biggest things I've learned has been that whether you're starting from scratch or if you're in an established company, investing in your data and not drip feeding data programs, slowly bit by bit, really allows you to minimize the cost of poor data management, that we all see across organizations.
I see. And Fiona, now that you've been able to quantify the cost of data quality and be able to establish a practice around data quality and of course the foundational data governance pieces around it, what are some of the major business benefits that you saw at Varo, and what are some of the tangible benefits that you saw at the end of that tunnel?
I think the biggest benefit for us, coming back to standing up a bunch of new systems that you have no visibility into, you don't know the data, getting visibility to data discovery quickly has been a huge business benefit for us to then be able to really speed up our product development. That was a really big one. And then also, I would say, coming back to the topic of the KPI lake, being able to centralize our KPI and metrics in one place and really have consistency and scale usage across the organization have been amazing for us.
Wonderful. So Fiona, that's an incredible opportunity that you've been given at Varo. However, I would see that most organizations probably don't have that luxury. And I think, Amy, you can speak to that a little bit. You know, how does that contrast with your experience that on taking on a similar challenge? However, with the added difficulty of needing to deal with a large lineup of legacy systems, and what kind of impact did that have on the speed and agility of your data management program?
Afshin, you hit the nail on the head. I'm very jealous of Fiona. However, I'm also, here to say that you can actually accomplish that with legacy systems. So when I started at Argo, the challenge from the business was that we need conformed, consistent, trusted, accessible data across all of our legacy platforms. So something that Fiona didn't have, but that data needed to be governed, and we had, we needed data quality and we needed consistent conformed data. Yeah. So we needed to think new, like beginners, and think big, but start small. So we have a complete cloud architecture for our new data architecture program, and we ingest data into a data lake. And what we've had to do is, because we have so many disparate systems, we had to use reference tools such as Ataccama for master data and RDM in a different mechanism than what they were actually designed for. So we do data quality and conforming of our data using reference data and master data through hitting that data in a data lake. And that kind of helped us to get away from the disparate legacy systems and having to know every single platform, head to toe, and seeing if a tool will connect to it, because we have everything from FoxPro, vSAM, SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle. I mean, you name the platform, we have it. So going into a data lake and having all the data there and then conforming it using Ataccama, building up that reference table. The first thing is you can be agile because you build a reference table for those fruits, I've heard a lot, vegetables, and then you create mappings for each of those old disparate systems. One thing Fiona hit on the nail is that those systems are very, domain knowledge. It takes time to learn those. But the agility is that we have those in a centralized place. We can start building out the mappings for those and start adding business value early to show them some conformed data. You have to think smart about what are your biggest systems that you want to hit first. Why? Is it premium volume? Is it, risk of, decommissioning those? How do you want to approach that? And start, doing it that way. So agile methodology is how we've gone. We're on this journey. I would say it's a journey. You need to, I think a lot of the other things that were said is that you need to invest in your data in order to actually make it actionable, make it available for digital platforms to access. And that's what the journey that we're on, and we've been very, very successful so far.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you. Appreciate it. For organizations who are in a similar situation as Argo, maybe in 20 seconds, what is the biggest piece of advice you can give when starting off on a similar journey? What is the one thing you really cannot do without to be successful?
You need to think through your platform. You need to be agile. You need to understand that you're going to run, especially working with older legacy systems, you're going to run into things that you thought would work with the platforms that you've selected. You need to work with those quickly and see, was what you thought actually going to work? And if not, adjust, start over, adjust, start over. We probably tried 100 different ways to do one thing, and you figure out which way works the best and keep moving forward, and perseverance. This is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, that's definitely key. Thank you, Amy. So obviously making sure that you have the right vision and roadmap on the technology front is very important. But on the other hand, you also have to make sure that you have a vision on the organizational side where everybody buys into this.
You need to have the business buy-in. Yeah, this is, I think somebody else had said, you know, it's the investment in data. It's not something, I think one of the words I used when I first was getting investment is this is not something that you dip your toe in the water, and if it's warm and it stays warm, you stay in there. You're in it for the long haul. You really need to make the investment.
And I think Dianne can speak to this. And Dianne, maybe if you can share a little bit on your experience on this. You know, where do you begin when it comes to getting buy-in from this modern approach? And what are the lessons that you can share on getting both IT and businesses to work in concert to achieve, your data governance goals quickly? What have you learned the experience of Blue Cross?
Well, thank you, Afshin. Like most organizations, Blue Cross Blue Shield Association wants to do all the big stuff, big data, blockchain, all of the stuff that's sexy and interesting. And the problem is you can't really do those things successfully if you don't have a good foundation. And the foundation is where data governance comes in. And the association has been siloed, like most organizations, over time. And those work groups within those silos have developed their own ways of doing things. So to try to have a data governance that brings all that together was very challenging. And so we started with reference data. In order to get conform dimensions across all of the silos, we started with the reference data, which then created a network so that analysts could go from one silo to another and be able to get some value out of it. That was 80% of data in most organizations is ROC, and that stands for redundant, obsolete, and trivial. And trying to get that sorted out, you really need a strong data governance group to help identify what's valuable to the organization.
Thank you, Dan. That's great. That's great advice. Much appreciated. So I'd like to do one last round robin for the panelists. This has been a great conversation, and we've been able to uncover a lot of the initiatives that we've taken on 2020. But before we close, in 30 seconds each, if you could maybe share, what do you think is going to prove decisive for the success and sustainability of your data management, data governance program in 2021? What's next for you? Maybe Heather, if you want to kick it off.
Yeah, I think stop focusing on data governance. That's the last chapter. Focus on data literacy and the business value. The governance is normally the last page of the book, and that's why it continuously fails. Start calling it data design so people start thinking about it differently. Aside from that, don't be afraid of ML and AI. It's here to augment all of us and to help us be our best selves. So embrace it.
That's lovely. Thank you, Heather. Fiona.
Following on or agreeing with Heather on that one, really data literacy, cultural change management to really embed and expand our capabilities and data usage is really all about what it's all about in 2021.
Absolutely, totally agree. Amy.
I would say same thing. It's data culture. It's the culture of the organization embracing the governance piece. I like Heather's answer of calling it something other than data governance because they think that's a librarian job, and that's not what it is. So I like that word. I'm going to start using that.
Very good. Dianne.
I think that organizations have to get over thinking about project approach to governing data. It really is a program. It's something that has to have its own budget, have its own personnel, and be elevated to that status within the organization.
Very good. Thank you all. This was a wonderful panel discussion. We still have a couple minutes. Hopefully, Mike, we can address some of the many questions we received from the audience. Mike, I'll let you pick the most interesting ones.
Yeah, so this actually comes from an audience member by the name of Jason. And Fiona, this question is for you. Are the data management outcomes, such as glossary, lineage, and data quality rules, are they federated to teams across Varo, or are those the functions and responsibility of a central core team?
Oh, that's a great question. I really strongly believe in business data ownership. So we have a wonderful group of about 16 business data owners across Varo. And so while we centralize the glossary in its mechanism so that we can maximize sharing, we have different data ownership for different data entities around the business.
Right. Well, Afshin, I know we're out of time at this point. Everyone's questions will be answered afterwards and sent out. So I turn it back to you and John for wrap up.
Yes, I wanted to once again thank all our panelists and for your time today and for the wonderful discussion. We will share the questions with you as well, and we'll take your input when sharing the question, the answers to the questions.
Thanks again, and to the panel, great discussion. You know, a couple of points again I take away: invest in your data, and I think that's more an issue this time around than say back in the financial crisis, where everybody was struggling. We didn't know. In the experience we had with the COVID crisis, I've seen more and more firms actually up their game with data, not reduce their staffs, right? Because they're recognizing that data is what they're going to need to manage through this crisis. Again, I heard the expression making data actionable. I really do believe that's important. What's the value of data if it just sits there? Nothing, unless it's used and discovered, right? You discover what's in it. And the expression you all use is data literacy. And really the importance of that is it's not just the technologist or the data professional has to be literate, it's everybody, right? The expression, it takes a village. So it isn't just the data team that manages data, it's the whole organization that manages data. So really good points. And again, thank you all for taking time and being part of the panel.
Thank you all. All the best.